Hi, Natalie. Morning.
Morning,
Morning.
how are you?
I'm fine. Thanks
Awesome.
for inviting me. This is kind of exciting, I think.
Yeah, super exciting. Thank you so much for being a guest on Your Holistic Life. These are conversations in wellness because we recognize that you are not just one aspect of wellness. You're not just the vitamins you take. So although this series is hosted by the Life Store, what we're trying to do here is incorporate various modalities and just create an awareness of things that are out there to help people be more well, be more healthy.
Indeed.
You know,
Indeed.
so Sonia, you and I have a long history.
And many, many, many metamorphoses between us.
Right? We met years ago
Cough, 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 cough.
when we both were in the banking world.
That's right. Such a
And we've
different world from this one, yes.
we've evolved. And here you are, licensed clinical psychologist. How did you make that jump from HR in financial services to being licensed clinical psychologist?
Well, it wasn't like a Damascus Road awakening one day. It wasn't dramatic. It was a very slow progression, and it's almost like changes were happening in my life, and I was following in its wake in a way. But I
Mm-hmm.
do remember the first time my interest was even marginally tweaked by psychology was while I was at Citibank. I had to ask a psychologist to come in to deal with an employee who was having uh, difficulties that were manifesting in the workplace. And so I invited this psychologist in. We were talking and how we were going to approach supporting this employee. And then I just started talking to her about her and what she did. And I just remember at the end of my talk with her, I just remember thinking, now, wow, now that's a job. Now that's a real job. And I kind of felt like what I was doing was like, what am I doing? This isn't real. That's real. I just remember thinking that line, that's a real job. That that kind of job makes a difference to people.
Ah,
It
that's I was actually gonna ask what was it that made that job real versus the
Yeah,
amazing stuff you were doing in City.
I guess because you could immediately see, she had it was such a structured approach to dealing with someone's emotions that was going to make a difference in their life that you could see. And she was walking me through what's going to happen. She's going to do this intervention, and the person is going to need this kind of support. And it was just such a concrete roadmap to changing somebody's life, you know. Um,
And
and I
that
guess,
sparked your fire.
yeah, it was just very fascinating to me. Anyway, nothing happened for many years until I left Citibank, and then we moved to Barbados. And I was bumming around the house whilst my husband was working, and decided to go to audit. I became kind of bored, and I went down to the UWI, the campus in Barbados at Cave Hill, and started auditing courses. And I said, hey, I remember that lady. Let me check out psychology. And so it was auditing for a couple of months. Then I enrolled. I liked it. I was like, okay, this is the right thing. And then I enrolled and I did a diploma there in psychology, just general psychology. And then when I came home, I furthered my studies, and that's the story really. And
Very
it has
cool.
been very, very, very um, fulfilling, very, very rewarding for me.
That's awesome. I love how you don't have to feel trapped in your career, that you were in HR for so many years, and this is, I mean, they're kind of close-ish,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
ish.
yeah.
But it is a complete career switch, and you're doing phenomenal and helping people, which is
Sure,
awesome.
for
Something that
sure.
always throws me, and I'm sure many of our viewers too. What's the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist?
Okay. You know what? I think the best way to describe it is kind of piggybacking on what you just said, right? If you think about it, people's physiological health is inseparable from their emotional health. The two are inextricably intertwined. Okay, I think the phrase you just used, did you just say a holistic approach to health, right? And so psychiatry focuses, I would say, more so on the physiological being, you know, the neurology of the individual and how that will manifest in certain disorders, you know, how different neurotransmitters work or don't work, and then the interventions that help people to cope when, you know, those systems, those physiological, biological systems aren't working right. The interventions are typically medication or some pharmacological intervention. That's the psychiatrist. And so the psychiatrist is a medical doctor who is specializing now in the neurological functioning of the body, as it were, and how that manifests in certain psychiatric disorders.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. Because for many, not all, many of these disorders, there is a very real chemical, biological component to it. You know, depression, anxiety. You know, for many of them, there are physiological components that can be addressed. The psychologist focuses more on how does the thinking of the individual, which is influenced by lots of things, culture, environment, biology. In fact, it's called a psychosocial, a psychobiological social approach to the individual. How do all of those things influence an individual's thinking? How does their thinking then influence their emotions? And how do the intersection of those two, their thinking and their emotions, then influence their behavior?
Gotcha.
Okay? And it's kind of using those levers, pulling those levers to get people's behavior to serve them well. Okay, because a lot of times how your thinking and emotions intersect can result in behaviors that kind of undermine your well-being. And so we help people to understand the interactions between those three, and once they understand it, how they can then manipulate those three things to get the kind of outcomes that they want.
Those things being their thinking, their emotions, and their behavior.
Their behavior, correct.
Right. So you can coach and guide people to some pretty significant changes, like if they want to really be their best self.
Absolutely.
And there comes the reward, right? From your perspective. So
I get I get the benefit of a lot of aha moments in my practice, you know, and you just see somebody like, wow, didn't think my favorite phrase is, I didn't think about it like that. And usually they're feeling validated in some way, like, oh, I'm not so broken after all. And that's freedom right there.
Yeah, I'm not so broken after all. That's powerful. I just felt that one in my emotional center. I think a lot of us walk around feeling broken, you know, feeling less than, feeling the self-esteem. And this impacts our wellness because, you know, emotions trigger hormones, and hormones touch every cell in the body, you know.
Absolutely.
So COVID and the environment that we've been existing in since February, March 2020 here in Jamaica, and for a longer time outside, has really put people up to a different level of test, like a different kind of stress, from just figuring out, how does life work now? You know, when I have to work and my children have to school from home, how do I do that? When I can't have the social interaction.
The big one is when I no longer have work.
Or when I no longer have work.
Or I may number one, and number two, or I may no longer have work.
Yeah, the worry.
That's a big one.
Worry. And now I'm spending an inordinate amount of time with my spouse because we're both working from home, and maybe I don't like them as much as I thought I did. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but
well, here's the thing, Natalie. The thing
crazy.
is that so half of my practice is adult individuals and the other half is couples, right? And how I like to say that, so a lot of couples have been saying that I realized I don't really like this person, and work was an escape. I didn't have to be around them, thank goodness, and now I'm trapped. And how I like to reframe that is, you don't like the interactions you're having right now.
I love that. I love that.
So let's focus on that.
A great
let's see what let's put the interactions in a petri dish. Let's look at them and let's see how we can modify them so that you're enjoying, it's satisfying being around this person again, because it was so once.
I love that. Just as simple as a reframe, and then the work from thereafter. So
and by the way, if you don't mind my saying, quite often that reframe helps you to also reframe yourself too, you know, because, you know, usually there's a lot of self condemnation in that as well. You know, I don't like the other person, but I don't like how I am when I'm with this other person either. And so there's this kind of condemnation. So that reframe is liberating for the individual themselves as well. Yeah. You're not your interactions, you're not your behaviors, you're not your thinking. You do all of these. These are processes that take place that we can modify.
Yep. You know, that's a great segue into a conversation about epigenetics, because epigenetics is founded on the principle and the belief that you are not your genes. So yeah, of course, I have brown eyes because genetically there were brown eyes in my family. Yeah.
Right.
But the expression of disease is not, you're not doomed by your genes, right?
Yes.
And the expression of disease, according to the study of epigenetics, is dietary, lifestyle, like those factors, right? Emotional impact.
I'm getting excited, sorry.
Is massive when it comes to your epigenetic expression, you know?
Yeah.
And you mentioned a few things. You mentioned anxiety, you mentioned depression, how couples interact, how we worry about what's going to be happening with work and stress and things like that. So we really wanted to touch today on, you know, thinking yourself well. And I guess the flip side exists, which is you can actually think yourself sick, right?
Well, guess what? I got excited as you started talking because I started to think about the surface of I don't know a lot about epigenetics, but based on the introduction you just gave, I started to think about how does that touch on my world of psychology, and I immediately went to brain plasticity. Do you know about that? How the actual structures of your brain can change depend on what you do. Right? And that's freedom again.
Gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, I mean, like when they discovered that, I mean, Natalie, let me tell you something. I think I was in my final year in my master's when they introduced that. And, you know, imagine for 2 years in your master's, you're studying disorders. You know, what are the symptoms of bipolar and psychosis, and, you know, we're studying everything that's wrong with an individual. And then we come upon, okay, now here, the people that are thriving, what's so special about them, kind of a thing. And guess what? Brain plasticity is one of the things, and positive psychology. I'm like, this is what we should have started off with. This is exciting. Now we're talking. Now we're talking about health, and we're talking about what the people that are healthy are doing right. And it was just a wonderful perspective to take, rather than studying the world of disorder. I guess we're studying we're focusing now on the things that are right, and how do we replicate that instead of rehabilitating, in other words, disorders. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. So this, you know, let's run down this path a little. What are the people that are healthy? What are they doing right?
Great. The people that are healthy, they are focusing on things such as positive emotions. They're able to create positive emotions such as awe. They can focus on small things and appreciate something awesome in a small, I'm at the beach, a small grain of sand or a rainbow or a mountain, you know, and they experience an emotion called awe, right? And you just mentioned it. That's a whole treasure trove of positive of hormones being produced right there. I mean, you get one big vitamin boost just with that. Okay.
Vitamin awe.
I like
I love
it. Let's bottle it, Natalie. Sell it in the life store.
Right?
Things such as gratitude. Well, you know, we all know that, right? Being able to cultivate gratitude, being present to gratitude, right? That's okay. And there's a long list. There's curiosity, being able to notice things and be curious about them. Those are other emotions. So that's one of the things that that positive psychology focuses on. You know what I mean? They're able, and because they're doing all those, they're able to, if you imagine, I'm now thinking about it, if you imagine those emotions almost as levers that you're pulling and manipulating, right? It means that they're able to then create things like healthy relationships. Okay, and we're social animals. The healthier your relationships are, the healthier you're gonna be as well. For instance.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yep, for sure.
Right? Then we keep on going. Then that influences now your decision making, right? So in the practical world of, are you going to invest your money, or are you going to move to somewhere else, or are you going to end this relationship, or are you going to start a relationship, or that, you know, your whole decision making is improved as well. You know, and
Absolutely.
on and on it goes. So you can see where it's touching in fact, if you think about it, it's touching in those 3 domains of thinking, feeling, doing, right? And then it's also touching on the biology, the social environment that you're in, and the psychology, the biopsychosocial model of psychology as well.
Yeah,
so it
I
has
see a lot
kind of trickle down effect on all those different.
Absolutely. I see a lot of interplay here, because if you are, say for example, you're in a job that you don't like, so you've got these feelings of stuck, right? And then you go home and you want to numb those feelings of stuck. So you have a few glasses of wine. Those glasses of wine lower your inhibitions around food. And before you know it, you're eating something, or you've ordered a delivery, or so you're going to consume something that you would not have normally consumed, that may not be what you know to be aligned with, you know, the food choices that you want to make. So therefore, you're eating yourself in a place that, had you been, so not loving the job is leading to eating habits that are not going to make you feel good, and may eventually lead you down the road to obesity and even things like diabetes, because you overeat. Yeah,
for sure.
So you can actually think
and
yourself.
Do you mind if I spread that net a little wider?
Right.
And so because of how you're feeling at work, right, and you come home, you're going to eat in a way that's not in your interest, right? You're probably going to interact with people around you in a way that's not in your interest. And those are the interactions you're going to talk about. I don't really like this interaction again, right? And that's almost like another branch of disorder that you're activating right there in terms of the relationships as well. So there's the eating that's you're not making good decisions around. There's the relationships that you're not making good decisions around. And then those, how you operate in those domains, feeds back now into your health. Again, and round and round and round it goes.
Those relationships at home very often are the most important relationships in your life. They're partners,
and we squander them.
Children, and so we have a crappy day out there, and then we come home and we blow up on the ones that we love the most.
We come home and kick the dog, kind of a thing.
Yes. Yeah.
The dog includes ourselves, our partner, our kids, our extended family, whatever.
So I know we can't oversimplify, and nothing in this conversation is meant to diagnose, prescribe, treat, or anything like that. You know, you play a super valuable role, and the interactions need to be one-on-one, and they need to be personal. But if we could just, you know, reach out and share something with people who are kind of feeling the anxiety. They don't know, their hours at work have been cut. They don't know if they're going to lose the job altogether. The kids are driving them bonkers. The partners, like, they just feel like overwhelmed, how do they start to think themselves better? How do they start to peel away those layers so that they can shine again, you know?
Yeah.
Where'd you start?
You know what? It starts with, honestly, Natalie, a concept called self-compassion. And self-compassion is about accepting my humanness. And by that I mean accepting that I am an emotional, thinking, doing being. So if something tough is happening to me at work, I am going to feel feelings of anxiety. I am going to feel feelings of inadequacy. I am going to feel all kinds of uncomfortable feelings. And it's in what makes a profound difference, a great starting point, is to be able to treat ourselves in the same way we would if somebody we cared about was suffering in the same way. So I always, it's easier like for parents, you know, think about if your kid came home from school, they'd had a horrible day, somebody had really mistreated them or they had failed at something, and they come home and they're beating up on themselves, they're anxious about, are they gonna fail, or are they anxious about, or they're feeling shamed, or all kinds of feelings, you know what I mean? How would we treat our kid? We kind of embrace them, we'd encourage them, we'd say, boy, you know, life really sucks sometimes, and I know what you're feeling is really hard, right? That's what we do with somebody that we love. Unfortunately, for ourselves, what we do is we kind of beat up on ourselves, like, you know, we're kind of pathetic, like, get it together kind of a thing. That's what we tend to do. We can be very self-judgmental and condemnatory because we are feeling. Does that make sense? And we don't have the same kind of almost empathy for ourselves. Okay. And if you think about it, let's go back to the child. If you think about it, if a child comes home suffering because of a difficult experience, and you say to that child, what the hell is wrong with you? Get up off, you know, get up, get it together. But we instinctively know that that's not going to help the child. We know that that's going to keep them stuck. We instinctively know that, right? And we understand that encouragement, compassion, understanding will be the, how should I say, the scaffolding that this child can climb on to get themselves upright, facing upright again, and hit the road again, right? And it works for us as well. If we can just change our attitude to our emotional experiences, you know, it's kind of like accepting our humanity. How do we do that? Okay, it starts with acknowledging to yourself how difficult the situation is in, right? Because the minute, and that's a different attitude from saying what's wrong with me. Okay, because what's wrong with me is suggesting that the situation ain't that bad. I should be over it. I should have it all together, right? Does that make sense? Am I right? And so the opposite is saying, hey, you know, Natalie, you are dealing with a lot right now, and this is really hard. You know, it starts there. Just acknowledging to yourself all of the difficulty, number one, in your circumstances, acknowledging that it's difficult, and two, acknowledging that the emotions that come out of that are difficult too. It's no fun being depressed. It's no fun having to cope with anxiety. That's difficult too. In the same way, you know, you help your child to say, whoa, yeah, that, you know, it's hard feeling so sad. It's hard feeling so inadequate, you know, just thinking of yourself in that way. You know what I mean? And then something that COVID is kind of helping us with is understanding that difficulty is almost something that unites us. The truth is that, Natalie, when we're going through those kind of difficulties, right, it can be a very isolating feeling. We can kind of feel like, you know, I'm the only one failing here, especially in the world of Facebook and Instagram and so on. You can often feel like I'm the only one who just doesn't have it together here. What is wrong with me? Okay, but if you realize that, you know, I was just talking to my husband this morning saying, you know, life is pretty messy sometimes, right? And we suffer as human beings. Every one of us have our own individual portion of pain to carry around. And in a strange way, suffering and pain kind of unites us. That's what kind of unites us as human beings. it's like we have a common part of our humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Then the feeling of not being so alone and so inadequate and so broken is not something, is something that you're thinking away, put it that way, through an kind of analysis. And then you don't, you're starting the process of not feeling so popped down and broken down and left behind, while the pack seems to have it all together and is racing ahead with their selfies and their blah 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 and
Right.
their life all in order. You know what I'm saying? So that's a thinking process, right? It's like a 3-step thinking process. One, this is tough. The other day, I remember a client came in and she was, just listing, talking about, in essence, she was talking about how uncertain COVID is, like, I'm never going to be able to do this again or that again. And I'm having this anxiety. What's wrong with me? And I'm saying, okay, so you have, yep, this is not going right. 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 Right? Did I get that right? And she said, yes. And I said, and then we have this pandemic thing that we're dealing with, right? I'm like, this is anxiety inducing. You're working, right? You're supposed to be anxious about all of this. Hello, that's how your brain works. You know what I mean? And I could just see her shoulders do this. Hey, yeah, and so it starts there, just acknowledging how difficult the situation is and how difficult the emotional reality is to deal with. 2, it's sort of being compassionate in your thinking about that. It's 3, responding to that with compassion rather than judgment. And 3 is recognizing that that's part of our common humanity. It doesn't isolate me. I am not alone, more broken than the next person. No, my pain connects me to Natalie. My pain to Natalie's pain. I'm not alone in this. And that's a sort of a thinking that, after you go through that, tomorrow you can wake up and start trying again.
Yeah, so it's, you started off with self-compassion and accepting our humanness, and then you move into saying, this situation is really tough. It's unprecedented and it's tough. And you've come back to being compassionate and non-judgmental. And we tend to think of the good type of being non-judgmental, that I won't judge you. But what you just hit on is that in being non-judgmental, I should not judge me as well.
I always laugh, Natalie, when you hear them saying the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I'm thinking, hello, if we could do unto ourselves the way we often do unto others, we'd be way ahead of the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's crazy. So after we've kind of cleared ourselves and we're feeling more compassionate, I still might be feeling kind of sad. How do I then bring about better feelings of well-being? Just perk myself up. Like, how do I change the channel? I mean, I personally have my coping techniques. I have my mechanisms. But what do you normally recommend to your clients?
Well, the first thing that I try to do is reframe sadness, right? A lot of times our perspective on the emotion of sadness is a kind of toxic one, that sadness in and of itself is a bad thing. Okay, but sadness is an emotion that's activated by the brain, by the emotional centers of the brain, and you're feeling sad for a reason. And so what and Natalie, whatever efforts if our objective in what we do is about avoiding difficult emotions or stopping difficult emotions, that's going to be typically toxic behavior.
Right.
You talked about coming home and feeling frustrated and fearful, right? And because I don't want to feel that, because those are negative feelings and I don't want to feel that, gluck, 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 gluck. Right? And that's not, so our response to the emotion is not healthy. So it starts with being able to be with that emotion as a human, accepting that emotion as a human processing of what I'm going through. That's what it is.
Accept the messy, accept the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Just don't, and that's part of the self there.
Yes, that's part of the self-compassion. You know what I mean? That's part of self-compassion, accepting that being sad is a part of my humanness, and it's difficult to be sad, but That's a part of all of this.
Yeah.
That's how human beings navigate through the world. When sad things happen, I feel sad. When difficult things happen, when scary things happen, I feel fearful. When anxiety-inducing things happen, I feel anxiety. Quite often, it's our response to those emotions that is maladaptive. So when people are feeling sad, I help them to be with that sadness, to figure out, well, what's this sadness about? And problem solve around what the sadness is about. The sadness is what? I've made a mess of my relationship, or I'm not sure if I'm gonna have a job tomorrow. Let's problem solve around not having the job tomorrow and not try to fix the sadness. You're working correctly if you're feeling sad.
Action. I often find action. You said, you know, what's the action, the problem solving around that. I often find that action helps.
Exactly. But I think what's challenging, Natalie, is to figure out to what do you direct your action.
Right.
Right? Oftentimes we direct our action at fixing the emotional being that we are. And I often say that's like trying to stop the blood flowing in your veins.
Right.
You'll be just about as successful. Yeah. Right? And that's where the self-judgment comes in again. Quite often, because we're sad, we're judging that and think and trying to figure out how to stop that sad. You know what I mean? Anytime happiness in and of itself becomes the objective, you're probably not going to get it.
I get you.
It's about living your life in a healthy, wholesome, pursuing what's important to you, pursuing your values, and then guess what? Happiness is an offshoot of that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I'm going to share a bit of a personal story surrounding sadness that just came up recently for me, in that one of my best friends died unexpectedly. She did not have COVID. She's 2 years older than me and a fitness instructor, an amazing human being. And she just died. And my world fell apart. Like, I literally fell to my knees the Saturday morning when I got the news. And I said, okay, I'm going to allow myself the weekend. I'm just going to leave the store. I'm going to go home. I'm just going to do whatever my body feels like doing as I start to mourn. But I'm giving myself till Monday morning. I'm going to be up and I'm going to be back at it. Well, Monday morning, I was not up and back at it. Now, this person who passed is a member of a community, of the spinning community. And she was such a beacon of light on the world that she had like just a community of people who just absolutely loved her. And we came together, and the closest of us came together and formed a WhatsApp group, because we're all over the world and there's COVID, right? So we can't go, we can't be with, but we found ways to be with virtually. And her funeral eventually happened on the Friday, so that's like not even a week after she passed. And we all participated in the funeral. It was a spinning ride, and then tributes on the beach, because she lived in Bali. And by the end of that, it was like at 3 o'clock in the morning. By the end of that, I felt, okay, I think I'm okay now. And then I decided it was time to go to sleep, and I closed my eyes, and I honestly felt a presence of her saying, it is okay now. So I say all of that, like I share all of that to say that I just gave it over. Like, I knew it wouldn't last forever. I knew that my compass doesn't stay down for long, but I needed more than the weekend to, and it's still, I get emotional when I think about her, when I talk about her, but I'm now functional, you know, whereas that week I was not so functional.
I'm sorry for your loss though, Natalie.
Yeah, well,
these things, one of the hardest things.
Yeah, but you're bringing in community, bringing in things that bring back the joy, honoring, in this situation, honoring memories, you know. Something that whenever I start to feel a little difficulty in any sort of emotion, I edit what I listen to. I edit the inputs. And I make sure that, just like, you know, like if Fame FM is playing a song you don't like, you switch over to Fire, or you go check out what's going on Irie. Yeah.
Yes, yeah,
We can change our channel
yes.
based on dialing into a particular frequency. What do you think about something like that as a concept for helping you ease your anxiety, ease your depression, lift your spirits? What do you think about something like that?
Well, what you're kind of touching on is this concept of something that I call diffusion, right? So the brain processes how the brain, here's the easiest way I think about it. When you think about the brain as an organ in your body, okay? Just like your lung, right? What your lung does is what does it do again? I think it produces carbon dioxide, takes in oxygen and produces carbon dioxide. That's what it does. You know, if you think about it as a machine, what your brain, and its job is to get oxygen into your blood. Okay, your brain has a job now to kind of protect you, and how it does that is it produces thoughts. Okay, all right, and so think about it that way. Now, when you have certain experiences, though, some of your thoughts can become extremely conservative. So when I fail at something, I start thinking that's something that logs in my, that's a let's call it a data point. I failed, right? Relationship, exam, whatever, okay? And then how our brain works is by connecting data points. So when I come upon a new challenge, guess what? That data point is activated. I failed, okay?
Trigger.
And right, exactly, right? And then we start the kind of network of thoughts. The brain just starts producing all sorts of other thoughts as well, because the brain is very conservative, more conservative, right? And it's always going to say, no, don't do that, kind of a thing. Remember, you failed at it before. Okay, so that's, I'm equating that to the one channel of, you know, one station. So that might be Fame FM. You failed, don't forget, you failed. Okay, that might be one channel. Okay, and what I help individuals to do is to kind of diffuse from thoughts that aren't going to help them. So if I know that I'm about to embark on something really challenging and risky, I know that the channel that going to play the loudest in my brain is the Fame FM, and it's the one that says you failed, because that's the data points that are connecting. So I try to help them diffuse from that and say, okay, it's just a thought. I don't have to hitch my wagon to that particular thought. The radio might be playing, but the radio on the table over there, so the radio now tie me down now, nothing. I can keep on doing what I want. Let the radio play, right? But also, because Natalie, it's easier to start doing something than stop doing something. That's how human beings are, right? So let the radio go on playing. Don't try switch off the radio, but add something like, okay, yeah, I know the radio. And that's acceptance again, accepting that part of my humanity is that on the threshold of risk, that is a radio that's going to start playing. Right. If I can reduce it to a radio, not my master, not the one thing that's dictating what I do. It's a radio playing. Okay, then I can decide, okay, that radio is playing, but what's my action going to be about? My action is going to be about, guess what? This relationship is really important to me, or this exam is really important to me. So my actions are going to be about that, not necessarily the radio. Let the radio go on play. I really can. But I also have another manifesto as it is. It is that I really want to develop myself. So I'm going to take a moment right now, and I have 5 more minutes. I'm going to read. I'm going to do something. My actions are going to be about what I want for my life, not about what Fame FM happens to be playing in the background. I'm not dedicating any energy to switching it off or shutting it down or so on. It plays. It's part of my human nature. It's going to play. I know what it is, you know. But what's more important to me is barreling ahead. Let me give you an example. My personal example is that, like, when you ask me to do an interview with you, right? And I do this all the time. So you think, hey, piece of cake. No, never, ever do I get asked to do an interview or to appear publicly or anything like that, and I don't feel the anxiety not tie in my stomach. And it's like, oh, whoop, there it is, kind of thing. You know what I mean? I know it's gonna come. Hey,
Yeah.
we're good friends. It's gonna come, but that's not what's most important. That's my brain just saying, oh, be careful. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Remember, you didn't do so good one time here. Right? And I'm like, yeah, I got it. Yeah, go on playing, but I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. This is important. And I keep going. So it's almost like I take the radio along with me if it wants to come for a ride or not. The point is I kind of not give it the importance. I free myself from feeling that I have to act on that particular set of thoughts that my brain happens to be producing in that moment.
Yeah. What about this concept of putting different thoughts in? So listening to or creating affirmations, or listening to affirmations, or listening to those motivational things. You know the ones I'm talking about. They're all over YouTube. You can do this. Get up, you warrior, you. And it's just all sorts of exciting hype. How does that play into?
Here's the thing. I think what's important is your attitude towards it. If you're not using, where people can end up really falling on their faces and hurting themselves is where they're trying to outshout the thoughts of doubt or replace them necessarily. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think you have a better choice because in a way you're kind of condemning yourself. It's like, because most people are trying to outshout it. They're like, I hate that part of me, kind of a thing. You know, I hate that I doubt myself. I hate that I don't trust people, right? And that's the judgment part that I'm talking about. Acceptance really is it percolates into a lot of, right? It's accepting that your brain is going to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, but what do I want my action to be about? I want my action to be about this particular affirmation. Okay. So whilst my brain is playing I'm not good enough playing, nobody likes me, that your brain is going to play that, let it play. But what do I want my action to be about? My action is going to be about, I'm a warrior who really wants to finish this marathon. So let me put one more foot in front of the other. And let me follow that station. Let me follow that affirmation in what I now do, my actions. Okay, so if as long as it's not about denying or condemning yourself for those thoughts that are so painful and those emotions that are so painful, and then you're cussing yourself for having them. That's the kind of judgment that I'm talking about, which is often what people do. You know, people talk about, well, you should be more self-confident, like it's a pill that you take.
Yeah, just turn it on.
Yes, it doesn't work like that. You should love yourself. You should be more gentle with yourself so that you can then pick yourself up.
Right. Makes a lot of sense.
Does it? Okay. Sure.
Yeah, man. Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So these things play a role, but not to
sorry, Natalie, one thing I do want to just mention too. A lot of times too, the affirmations can be about, as I said, people, affirmations can sometimes be about, you should not feel inadequate. There's no place for that here. Does that make sense? You should not feel depressed. And now those are emotions we cannot switch off at the switch. There's no switch to switch them off.
Right. And the thing is that the brain doesn't recognize negatives. So when you say you should not feel depressed, you have to process depressed first before you process the not.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's one of the presuppositions of NLP, I think, even to say things out the way you want them. So don't say, here we go, don't say. Say it the way you want it.
Exactly.
Say it the way you want it.
If you don't mind, I always bring it back to my favorite topic, which is couples. I'm so sorry. But the truth is, so a lot of times when I'm talking to couples, for instance, I say to them, when something goes wrong in your relationship, you end up beating up on the person for what they haven't done, and you're cussing for what they haven't done, and you still don't say what you need yet. The time you're there cussing them that they never did this or they did that, why don't you just tell them what you need? Right?
Yeah.
Tell them, you know, I come home and you ignore me. You're talking on your phone and you're condemning, and all the person going to be is defensive, right? And all now, you know, tell them what you want. You're done. You're cussed from top to the right. Yeah, just say, hey, I just came home. Can you please hug me?
Yeah.
That's saying what you want. That's saying it the way you want it to be, right? The person don't have to be defensive if that's what you're gonna do, right?
Yeah.
And that taps into the notion of expressing a positive need, saying what you want the person to start doing rather than telling them what you want them to stop doing.
Yeah. If I can bring it back around to what we started, yeah, thinking yourself well, and you mentioned some really positive emotions that you want to bring in the experience into your body, and you mentioned awe, gratitude, and curiosity. These are, if I could bring it all the way back, these are 3 emotions of many that you're suggesting that we cultivate in ourselves. So taking a moment to watch a sunrise and going, isn't that beautiful? Or taking a moment to watch a butterfly and wonder, where is it going to go next? Which flower is it going to go next to? It sounds kind of hokey.
Really checking it out, it out, all the details. Sometimes I'll be honest with you, Natalie, my attention is not as long as I'd like it to be.
Yeah.
So I add certain tools to help me to do that. And one of the things I do when I want to be mindful of something is to count. So I will look at a butterfly and count the different details that I can notice. Wow, hey, one wing is slightly bigger than the other. Well, what do you know? Hey, the blue spot too. The blue spot over here is more oval, and over here on this wing, it's that way. And oh, wait a minute, and the yellow, it matches the petal that it's on. Whoa! And 4, so it's really being present as much as you can to things around you, you know, activating your 5 senses, what you can see, hear, taste, touch, smell, and listening, paying attention.
Bringing in, that's really good, because you get to slow down, because you and I are both very fast-paced people. But bringing in these positive emotions is going to trigger the hormonal cascade that goes with positive emotions. It's going to trigger the neurotransmitters. So these become almost self-perpetuating, and over time, when you encourage them in yourself, then they start to come more naturally, and then before you know it, you're elevating your spirits, and these emotions
and modifying your body chemistry, you know.
That's exactly where I was going, because your emotions have, they have like physical manifestations.
Exactly.
And expression in disease.
Exactly. And I mean, it's exactly where you started off, you know, if you having one certain kind of experience and thinking about it in a certain way, then you're triggering the stress inducing hormones, right? And our body does that very naturally. As you say, who that? Whoops! We get a nice little dose of adrenaline right there. We just need to hear a door slam. You know what I mean? We just need to turn on CNN for 30 seconds. Woo! One big dose of cortisol right there. Kind of a thing, right? We do it at the drop of a hat. And so what we're talking about now is cultivating the a similar response, a counter to that, an antidote. We're cultivating that by trying to always be present, so that we can seize moments to create these positive emotions. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And within that sphere of creating the positive emotions, so that we're creating a positive environment in our body, recognizing that things are going to happen that are going to derail us. Right. Somebody's going to die. Somebody's going to lose a job. Something stressful is going to happen. A taxi man going to rear end you. Like, but it's
and not, oftentimes on the same day.
Yeah. Gosh, what is it about that energy? So it's not to fear those one-off things. So we experience it, we allow it to happen, we're compassionate about the fact that life gets messy and this happens and I felt this way about it, but we do what we need to do to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off with compassion and try again and try again.
For sure.
Yeah.
And a wonderful thing that I love to help my clients with is just helping them to speak the language of emotions. You know, if I'm sad about something, so let me tell you, for instance, so I'm just elaborating on the fact how important it is to be with your emotions, and make space for them, for your emotions, you know. So for instance, if a lot of times if you think about people who are severely depressed, right, a lot of times the life has no meaning for them. And I'll often say, well, if you're feeling really sad that life doesn't have any meaning, what is the sadness telling you that's important to you? Light bulb. Okay, I need meaning in my life. Yep, that's what the sadness is trying to tell you. That's how your brain works. Yeah.
Action. Yeah.
Let's go find some meaning. That's what we're problem solving around, not the sadness.
You know,
sadness has a purpose.
Yeah, exactly. It serves a purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, it helps point you in the right direction, kind of a thing, you know?
This is a whole conversation, making space for your emotions. And I think, I'm going to generalize here, but I think women are doing an okay job kind of getting there. I think our men they still don't feel that it's okay to be with their emotions. You know, I was talking with someone yesterday about something, and you can tell that it's something that they're super passionate about, and they hadn't put much, I don't know, maybe they hadn't made the strides necessary to realize this dream. And the conversation that we were having was making them realize that they could realize the dream. And they looked away, and I saw tears in their eyes. And I said, what is it? And they said, no, it's okay. Shut it down. I'm feeling an emotion. Shut it down. But when we bottle those things up, you know, so I think men, if you've watched all the way to the end of this interview, men need to realize that it's okay to express emotion. And the bottling up of those emotions bottles up the hormones, bottles up the neurotransmitter, and starts that whole situation in the body that makes disease easier to take hold. It's not a positive.
And not to mention, it's not gonna go away, number one, and it's gonna come up. And when it comes up, that's when you have little or no control over your behavior.
Yeah.
When you don't press it down, compact it down as much as possible, it's going to come out one day. And when it blows, you're not going to have a lot of control. You're probably not going to get the outcomes you want.
Yeah. Wow, this has been awesome. Tea House Therapy. That is such a beautiful name. It makes me think of curling up on a couch talking to a good friend. This is the name of your practice.
It is. And I have a great coach.
You do?
Had a client. Yes, I had a client once. She would come to me on a Thursday, and she was so wonderful. On Thursday morning, she would put on her Twitter, "It's Coach Day today," and there's a picture of my coach. So I have a great, big, huge, soft, comfy couch and lots of teas all over the place. You name it, I have it. In terms of teas, and people come. A couple of times they're drinking coffee too, but that's okay. And but yes, it's about a conversation to just kind of help you figure out what road you want to be on. Are you on it, and how can we get you right on it again? And you know.
Yeah, we need, I think more people need that unbiased, compassionate ear that has knowledge, that can kind of ask the tough questions and make you have those reframing aha moments.
I love those.
Yes. Sonia, this has been awesome. How do people find you? Are you on social media? Do you have a website?
Yes, I have a website. It's SoniaWinterAssociates.com, and you can get to me through my website.
Okay. Are you on Instagram too?
Yes, I am. I am on IG. It's Tea House Therapy. I have a Facebook page as well. You can find me at Tea House Therapy.
Awesome. Well, Sonia, thank you so much for your time. Valuable.
Thanks for the opportunity. My favorite topic, I'll go on and on. So I mean, reining in. So thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome. I appreciate your time and effort, and continue doing the amazing work that you're doing, because there's no shortage of people that need support.
Yeah. Well, and another great thing about COVID, I will say, is that people are more open about getting this kind of support now.
That's
You
so
know,
good.
it's COVID has kind of pulled down our guard about mental health, and that's great. It's created a space for more people to feel okay
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
come and get therapy. So
I can imagine. I
good.
can imagine. Tell you what, we're going to do this again, and we're going to talk couples next time. Straight couples,
Yay!
since that seems to be something that you love.
Yes, please.
All right. Peace and love.
Take care, Natalie. Bye bye now.